Hello everyone, this is Chris Fulop, and today I'm going to be bringing you a deck tech over Ryan Sabelhaus's Volcanion Turtonator deck that he used to place in the top 8 of the North American Intercontinental Championships. Volcanion decks have been a major presence within the metagame ever since Steam Siege came out and the cards were printed. Now, what this list looks like compared to what lists when the set first came out is quite different. You'll notice only 3 Volcanion-EXs, despite it being one of the most important cards in the deck. For this deck to function, it uses Steam Up, Volcanion-EX's ability to discard fire energy to be able to boost the damage of all fire attackers by 30 that turn. This ability does stack, so if you have all 3 of them in play, you're dealing an additional 90 damage per attack. Volcanion-EX is also a powerful attacker as it has Volcanic Heat for 2 fire energy and a colorless, which deals 30 damage. And that's before using any modifiers from Steam Up. The downside of this, and this ends up being very important when you look at the trainer cards coming up later, is that it cannot attack on the next turn. Now, luckily, Volcanion-EX is not the only attacker in the deck. It also runs 4 Volcanions, which has Power Heater for only 1 fire energy dealing 20 damage. The best part about this attack is that it also takes 2 basic fire energy cards from your discard pile and attaches them to your bench Pokemon. This allows you to deal with some of the heftier attack costs of the attackers in the deck. Volcanion also ends up using Steam Artillery for 100 damage as an attack quite frequently. It's nice that it's a non-EX attacker that also has 130 hit points. This card's a real chore for a lot of decks to deal with. The newest additions out of Guardian Rising are both Turtonator-GX and Tapu Lele-GX. Tapu Lele is pretty much in every deck at this point, as Wonder Tag is just such a great consistency boost. It lets you search your deck for any supporter card, and that just does a tremendous amount of work over the course of a game to make sure that you always have what you're looking for. Turtonator-GX is a little more specific to a Volcanion deck in general, but it has 2 powerful attacks. It has Bright Flame, which deals 130 damage for 3 energy, but it does require you to discard 2 energy cards in the process. It deals a little bit more damage than Volcanion-EX's Volcanic Heat, and it makes Turtonator an ideal attacker to swing into bigger, heftier hit-pointed Pokemon. The main reason this card is in your deck is Nitro Tank GX. For 1 fire energy, it lets you search your discard pile for 5 fire energy and put them into play on your Pokemon. This pretty much guarantees that you'll be able to attack pretty comfortably from then on out, since this deck does have a little bit of an issue with keeping energy in play if you don't get a chance to use Nitro Tank or a couple of power heaters over the span of a game. The weird Pokemon that stands out is actually the 1/1 Starmie line. Starmie's Space Beacon, though, is exactly what this deck wants. Every turn allows you to discard a card to get 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile back into your hand. This deck ends up running all fire energies, but it needs a lot of them to be able to power up Steam Up every turn and make its energy attachments. Starmie just kind of covers everything this deck wants. We're going with the Breakpoint Staryu over the Evolutions one, despite the fact that the Evolutions one has 20 additional hit points. Why? Because this Starmie has a free retreat cost. That ends up playing a more important role in this deck than you'd end up thinking. Next up, we have the energy card in the deck. This deck runs 14 fire energies. Nothing fancy. Because of the amount of energy that you end up using in this deck, you really do want a lot of them. Between Steam Up and just wanting to be able to get a critical mass of them in the discard pile for both Power Heater and Nitro Tank, the deck really does benefit from having this many energy cards. A traditional Volcanion list would run energy retrievals and Fisherman as a way to get cards back, but this deck uses Staryu, and you also generally don't want a reliance on item cards in this format right now. Vileplume is a presence, and more importantly, there's the new Guardians Rising Garbodor that has Trashalanche, which deals damage for every item card in your discard pile. That's really important to pay note to, because Ryan has pretty much crafted most of his list around avoiding being weak to that attack. You'll see a couple of numbers in the trainer cards that are a little bit suspicious, and those are a result of trying to play around that Garbodor. Let's look at some of the trainer cards that this deck is running. We see the obvious 4 Professor Sycamore and 4 N. They're just great consistency cards, and this deck just wants to run as many of them as possible. If you're trying to avoid playing a lot of item cards, you're going to need to compensate by running a higher than normal supporter count. On the topic of higher than normal, you'll notice the suspicious 3rd Lysandre. Most decks only run 2 of them, and I think one of the reasons why Ryan ended up running the 3rd copy is he is only running 3 VS Seekers. VS Seeker is a little bit weaker against Trashalanche, and if you can just pad out the actual supporter count, you can kind of circumvent having to play the 4th one. You'll also notice he's only running 3 Ultra Balls, which is almost unheard of. That's actually possible as a result of playing 3 Brooklet Hills as his supporter cards. While this on the surface looks like it would only be able to grab Staryu, as once per turn you can search your deck for a basic water or fighting Pokemon and put it onto your bench, you can actually grab Volcanion-EXs because while it's primarily known for being a fire type Pokemon, it is also dual type water, which qualifies it for being able to be searched up with Brooklet Hill. This makes it so that you really don't need the 4th Ultra Ball, as you're going to set up fairly fine with the addition of the support of the Stadium card. For the rest of the trainers, we have 2 Float Stone, 2 Switch, and an Olympia. These are all switching cards, which are really important in this deck. Because Volcanion-EX's attack allows it to only attack every other turn, you need a way to be able to put it back onto your bench, either to bring up a new attacker, or to be able to then promote it later, a purpose which the Free Retreat Staryu is actually pretty good towards. We have 2 Float Stones and 2 Switches because you do have a bit of competition for tool slots on your Pokemon, since we are running 3 Fighting Fury Belts, a card which I will get to in a little bit. Switch is pretty much your no frills, just standard, I need to get this Pokemon out of the active position. It's a little less conditional than Float Stone. Olympia is a card that can be grabbed with Wonder Tag off of Tapu Lele, and it can be reused with your 3 VS Seekers. It also is able to heal a little bit of damage here and there, which isn't the primary function of the card, but it does come up more than you'd think. Finally, we have 2 Max Elixirs, a card which had historically been a 3 or 4 of in this deck. The addition of Turtonator-GX makes it so that you don't need as much energy acceleration into the deck as you previously would have, plus you're trying to play less item cards, so you can get away with only running 2 Max Elixirs. Fighting Fury Belt is a card that had previously been played in most decks relying mainly on basic Pokemon, but has seen a sharp decline in play lately as a result of the printing of Choice Band. Choice Band's damage output is higher, and the boosted hit point total is not really safe anymore because most decks are playing Field Blower. Nonetheless, this deck is already leveraging high hit point totals and relies on a non-EX Pokemon with 130 hit points to attack. This can really draw out a game and let you leverage these Fighting Fury Belts and force your opponents to actually draw into their Field Blowers. It ends up adding up over the span of an entire game. On the topic of Field Blower, this deck does run 2. This is mainly as a way to deal with tools attached to the Breakpoint Garbodor, which has Garbotoxin, which turns off your abilities. This is something that this deck does not handle well because it does really rely on Steam Up. Being able to take tools off of those Garbodors and get your abilities back can really make the difference in a game. In addition to this, it does also answer random tools and random stadium cards, so it's a bit of a catch-all as well. Finally, we have a Rescue Stretcher, which is just a bit of an insurance policy to make sure that you have access to your Pokemon. You're only running 3 Volcanion-EXs, and this is a bit of a wild card that can function as any one of your Pokemon. So you're able to really stream together a bunch of baby Volcanions if you need to go that route, while also being able to be a Turtonator or a Volcanion-EX when need be. It also makes sure that your somewhat fragile Starmie line is able to be retrieved, considering that card ends up being much more important than it might look like at first glance. Volcanion is one of those decks that, despite not always being as flashy or as hyped as some of the other top tier decks, has always been able to put up good results. Ryan making top 8 at the greatest attendance tournament of all time is not a surprise. He's a great player who picked up a great deck and skewed the numbers in order to deal with the expected metagame that he was going to face. Going forward, I expect this build to be the good starting point to jump off of if you wanted to play this deck.